Hey, this is Dan from Random Ambition, and if you want to take advantage of some hidden storage space in your van, in the rocker panels, this is the video for you. So there are a couple different companies that make rocker lockers for the sprinter van, but basically, if we come over here, if you look at this, that is a hollow cavity. There's a structural support about right there. But basically, all of that space is available to be used. And so they've come up with basically what they call a rocker locker. This one's by Flatline Van Co. I really like their products. Their installation is really easy. The instructions are detailed. And here's what comes in the kit. So you get the face, you get internal brackets. There's an internal gasket. And then this is your template that you'll put up on the van. And then hardware kit. So this does require a substantial drilling and cutting of the van in order to get everything put together, because you have to cut out the openings and you have to drill several holes in order to do that. So there are a couple things that you're going to need. You're going to need some blue masking tape to mask off the rocker panel. You're going to need a marker of some kind or a pen to draw the outlines. You're going to need a 7/32 drill bit, a 1/2 inch step drill bit. That's what this is. A center punch to make sure that your holes are where they're supposed to be, a drill of some form, and you can either use a jigsaw or an angle grinder with a cutoff wheel. We're going to be using a jigsaw. And then once it's time to install everything, you just need a 5/16 inch combination wrench to get to the nut of the bolt, and then they have an included Allen wrench that'll help you put everything together. So if this is something you're interested in, please stick around for the video. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to clean that rocker panel off, and then we're going to apply tape over top of everything. Now, as you guys know, I do have the 170 extended, and these rocker lockers are really only made for the 144 and the 170. I did speak to Flatline Van Co. before I bought these. It fits in the same exact position that the normal 170 has. You just are going to have that much more cavity to fill out once you install everything. So next step for us is blue tape. All right, now that we got that done, we're gonna position the template so we know where to draw our lines and to mark our holes. All right, so we got our template out, and it's going to go up here. Let me show you what it looks like on the other van first, so you can kind of see the difference of what we're talking about. So they provide tabs, and what that's going to do is kind of give us a where to put it, so we know where everything's supposed to go. So for a reference, the tabs are supposed to come up to the bottom of this plastic and hit the back of that bumper, and that's going to give us about where everything goes. So that leaves about 1 inch from this edge to this edge, so we know where everything is. So there's an internal support right here that you can just slide the gasket and those interior frame members into, so you have to make sure you're far enough off of that. And now let's put it on the new van, and we'll show you what the difference in kind of size. As you saw, it takes up this entire panel, and it will not do that on the other side. So I took and made it a mark about 1 inch from where this seam is right here, and that's how we're going to line the template up to make sure that we're where we need to be. So you can see we still use these tabs to line up with the plastic there and right here, but you can see how much more of this panel is here. And that's all open space. So once we get into the cabinet, I can show you how everything works. But that whole cavity is open on the inside. It's not watertight, it's not supposed to be watertight, but there are things that you can stick in there that it's not gonna make but so much difference. There's a drain in this first compartment. So all the water will flow down underneath the supports into that. So we'll get this taped up for the rest of the way, and then we'll start marking everything off. Kind of got it where we want. Now we're gonna draw the places where we need to cut and mark all the holes. So we're gonna draw a line on the inside of this box, inside of this box. Those are gonna be our cut lines, and then we're gonna mark each one of these holes. So there's a lot of them. All right, and here's our template. So we have everything marked. So first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna get our center punch, and we're gonna center punch each one of these holes. That way when we use the drill on the metal, it doesn't walk on us. So the holes go exactly where we want them. We're just going to do that for that whole section. All right, now we're going to take the 7/32 drill bit, and we're going to drill out all of these holes. All right, we got all that done. So now we're gonna take that 1/2" step bit, and what we're gonna do is we're gonna drill out the 4 holes on the inside of the box. So this one, that one, and that one, and then that one, and that one, and that one. What that's gonna do is it's basically gonna allow us to connect the dots when we make the cuts. Also, it gives us a place to start our blade since we're using the jigsaw. All right, now that we have those holes drilled, so you can see how much bigger they are. The way Flatline Vanco suggests you make the cuts is you make the cuts along the top, and then you make this cut, and then this cut is last. Same for this side, this way, and then this one is last. So that's what we're gonna do. So it's a pretty big cavity in there. All right, you can see that center support I was telling you about earlier. That's where that is. You can also see right here is where that drain hole is. That's where the drain is, so if there's any water that gets up in there for whatever reason, it's gonna drain right out. So now Mercedes coated the inside of this compartment with a waxy film. I guess it's supposed to protect the metal or so getting the metal shavings out might be a little bit tricky. We're gonna vacuum up as much as we can, and then it looks like we're probably gonna have to scrape some because those hot pieces of metal now are melted into the wax, so just something to think about. I don't know if all the vans are like that, but mine is. All right, so our next step is we pulled the tape off. And we're going to use a deburring tool to kind of get the sharp edges off, and then anything that is left over from this, we'll just use a file. So once you do that, you don't have that real sharp edge, and it makes it nice so you don't cut everything up. And so we'll get this all vacuumed out, and then we'll move to the next step. Those are great little tools. I'll leave a link in the description below if you want to check them out. They're not very expensive, but they're really useful, especially with van projects where you're cutting holes and things. It's nice to be able to run that around instead of having to use a file. But if you have to use a file, it's, you know, pretty much the same thing. And you just got to do that till the edges are nice and clean. All right, so we got everything cleaned out, and then we went ahead and painted the inside. So that's a nice coat of paint on the inside, a little bit more rust preventative. The wax comes off fairly easily. It's a little bit of work, but once you get it done, it's done. So the next steps for us, we're gonna let this paint dry, and the way this works is the main panel goes on first, and then you take a few bolts and you just kind of push through, and then you put the gasket on, and then you put the backing plates. And so the backing plates and the gasket make that seal against the van body, but that's also how the door kind of functions and gets itself so that it clamps properly. So the brackets that go on the inside, they're a little bit deeper than the drawer opening, and that way you have something to latch to. So as soon as the paint dries, we'll get to putting that together. All right, we are ready. So I got the gaskets laid out. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to stick the gaskets inside of the cavities, and then we're going to put the big plate up. Then we're going to take a couple of the long screws, and we're going to feed them through to kind of hold the door in place. And then we'll start fitting in the backing supports and slowly adding washers and lock nuts to the back of those, and we'll work our way until we get them all done. All right, so we got those first few started just to kind of hold everything in place. Now we're going to start placing the backing plates in and get a few of the washers and lock nuts on there so that we can start working our way around. All right, we're just gonna follow that process, adding a bracket and then bolts, washers, and lock nuts all the way around. All right, we got everything pretty much straight. You can see the outside, the van sheath, the rubber gasket, and the inner pieces, and you can see where those nuts are. So before I finish the last one, I wanted to show you some difference. So all of the connection points to this point have just been a bolt through the three surfaces. On this edge right here, because it comes so close to that, the edge of the bracket actually has inserts that you screw things into, and so those four have shorter bolts, and then they also have some Loctite. So once you put this bracket in, those outside four pieces all get the shorter bolts with Loctite. All right, so if you drill all your holes right, everything should line up. So we're gonna tighten those down. Again, those lock nuts on the back, they are a 5/16 So you can either use that end or that end, and we're gonna tighten everything down, and then we'll go over everything once we're done. I don't know if I mentioned it or not, but this is kind of the sequence I'm doing as I'm tightening. So I did these 4, which were those bolts that have the nuts on the back of the plate. And then I'm just working my way up and down in a zigzag until we get to the last 4. That way we're flattening everything as we go. That's just the way that I prefer to do it. So that's the direction we're taking. All right, and that wraps up our install. Man, I think those things look good. So both sides are done, and I think on the driver's side, so on our old van, we had our inverter AC input, shoreline input in the side of the van, and I think what we're gonna do is, because of these cavities, we're gonna put in an air line through that one and our shore connection in through that one. That way we're not drilling any more holes into the van on the sides anyway. And then we can keep airline and electrical cords and all that stuff on this side. And I think on the passenger side, we may do some recovery stuff. So some soft shackles, recovery rope, things like that, that we can put in the bag and throw in that compartment and easily access it when we need to. The nice thing about these things is they also lock. So you don't have to worry about people taking your stuff, or at least for the most part, you don't have to worry about people trying to break in and take your stuff. So super happy with it. It's a really neat solution to gain some extra storage space for things that you're gonna use frequently. So for us, airing up is more about comfort than anything, or airing down is more about comfort than anything else. So we are gonna be putting an ARB twin compressor on here, and having access to all the electrical cords on the outside and not having to stick them in the garage area of the van, I think is just a great solution. So highly recommend it. Pretty easy to install. You just have to have the nerves, do a lot of drilling and a lot of cutting. So if you made it this far, give yourself a thumbs up. Thanks for watching. Consider watching some of the other videos we posted about the upfit on this van. I think the next thing that we're gonna do is probably put down the floor on top of the subfloor we just did. So again, thanks for watching. This is Dan from Ramblin' Ambition. We'll see you next time.